how do you, because I love T, he's a great guy, but how do you convince T to scale that ultra-violent back to maybe a more a more family-friendly situation?
I don't know. I guess I've always had that fatherly effect or something, because let's face it, I'm older than most of these promoters around. I knew T years ago because, we did some wrestling shows where he was involved even before he was T Ranchula. And we always hit it off. And when I had gotten my ring, I was doing there was a thing that was going on, a training seminar with Tom Pritchard down at the in the North Shore area at near under the bridge off Federal Street there. And we went ahead and we did this training seminar. Well, we used my ring, and again, Norm Connors had he had to tie into this as well, and so it was all good. We went down there and put my ring up and everything, and we were working, and T Ranchula happened to be there. And he come up to me and started talking, and he had known that I had bought that ring. Word gets around that, Dan Polinsky now has a ring. What's he going to do, start running on his own or whatever? Well, that's what ended up happening. But he come up to me, and we talked, and we always got along good. He was very respectful to me all the time. And he said to me, he goes, hey, he says, you and I ought to do something together. He goes, if you're thinking of doing something on your own, getting your license and all, you and I ought to think about going in together. And he goes, because I know a lot of people and all this and that. And I says, that's a good possibility. I might be interested in entertaining that idea. Well, Drew Lazario, who I think most of us know from wrestling, he went ahead and he was working with T at the time. They had done some work together. And T had told me that Drew was also interested in getting hooked up with somebody to get a promotion going, and he would be interested in being like the third guy involved. So I said, well, yeah, maybe we could talk. So we did. We all met, and I don't even remember where we met, Eaton Park or something, maybe in Munhall or something, and we met one day and had a long conversation. Long story short, they all wanted to go into business with me, and T, of course, wanted to resurrect FNW. I wasn't all that crazy about using the word FNW because, if you think about it, you look at it, you know what that probably stands for. Certainly not something that...
Not Far North Wrestling.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had to change the meaning of FNW, and we decided we're going to call it Far North Wrestling, which was a Andrew Lazarchik thing that he had come up with prior to that. So long story short, we got together and decided we were going to start running shows. And I got my license and all the insurances and everything necessary. And we started promoting shows. And we decided that with Far North, it probably would be a good idea doing something north of Pittsburgh. So we decided, we didn't want to, go against Jim Miller because he had the McKeesport area. Norm had, a lot of the South Hills area. So just out of respect, it was like the territory days. I felt in my mind we should have territories. So nobody was up north. So, well, we're going to be the north guys, the Far North guys. So we decided we're going to do our shows up there at the Butler Days Inn. And as you know, you were there numerous times. They were really good shows. We had good crowds. We promoted like you wouldn't believe. I mean, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before a show, you could see me and T Ranchula and my son. We were driving all over Butler putting posters on anything that was standing still. We did a really good job of promoting the shows. And we had a little touch. We tried to bring in some bigger names once in a while to sweeten up the deal, but we stuck with mostly the local guys. And I told T, I said, first of all, I want guys that look like wrestlers. I don't want somebody that can't get over as a wrestler. It looks wise. And I said, I don't want to turn this will not be an X-rated show. I don't want everybody dropping F-bombs and being vulgar. I want this to be catered to everybody, including the kids, which we did a very good job of that because we had a lot of kids at our shows. And every show I'd go in the back and we'd have our little lineup meeting. And again, you were there. We used to tell everybody their instructions before and after the booker, got done telling them what was going to go on or whatever. And everybody knew, don't come out and get vulgar with the crowd because chances are if you do that at our show, you definitely won't be back. So
if we could send you back in time today, knowing everything you know, whether it be to the beginning of FNW or when you first started with IWC or even farther back when you first started back there with Jim Miller, PWX, and you could go back and give yourself any type of advice or tell yourself to do anything different, Would there be anything you'd do differently?
Yeah, I think I would tend to go the old school way of doing things. Of course, everything back then, wrestling was real to everybody, and that gave you a huge advantage on what you wanted to do. Nowadays, back then when I started going, there was no such thing as a smart mark or a mark. If there was such a thing, maybe I was one. I don't know, but I never heard the word before. But I would say the old school way of wrestling is what I liked. I prefer characters. And I always went towards a independent guy who had a character about him. I didn't care. Maybe he was an overweight guy, or maybe he had something unusual about him. If he was a character, I loved bringing him to the show because I used to sit back and watch the show, and I really would watch the crowd response. And if I saw somebody that I know was getting the big pop and the fans were all smiling and laughing, I was all for that. I can't remember his name right now, but we used to bring in a guy from Ohio, and he was a black guy, and he dressed as a woman.
Super Oprah.
Super Oprah, that was it. And I'm going to tell you what, I love the guy. He was so nice to work with and everything. Did exactly what he was told. He would get in the ring, and everybody had an absolute blast when Super Oprah was in the ring. And a lot of promoters would probably never think of bringing Super Oprah in. I was a different promoter. I thought, you know what, you guys are getting so wrapped up in guys with the abs and you're forgetting about the character. And when people come to a wrestling show, they want to escape. They want a story. They want to see something fun. And if every wrestler that you see gets in that ring and he's muscle bound and 5'8" or 6'2" or whatever, and he's got abs and he's got the all-American boy look, that takes away from the characters of the show. So I've always leaned towards the characters, and I think that when I worked with Norm was more geared to these super indie kind of guys. I never went for that, but Norm was the boss, so I wasn't about to change any of that. Jim Miller had more of the characters, I thought, than what Norm did. When I got there and we started doing ours, I think we went more towards the characters, and even some of the old school guys, like the name guys, I was always trying to find somebody that like we brought Hacksaw Jim Duggan in a couple times, and it was fun because you could just see how he works the crowd. I think a lot of these wrestlers today, because a lot of them are told what to do, they totally don't work the crowd. And that's one of the big things that I love watching my son Sam wrestle. Sam it's poetry in motion when you see the way he works a crowd. I had the pleasure of going to see him wrestle in Mexico City last year, 2 shows. And I tell everybody all the time, I've been going to wrestling all these years, and I think I had more fun and enjoyed the 2 shows I saw in Mexico City because the different characters and just everything that was going on. But even then, you had these luchadors, and a lot of them were still the same, different costumes and things like that. But when Sam came out, there comes your character. He comes out, the minute he hits that ramp, he's engaging with that audience. And I watched probably 18,000 people go absolutely nuts the minute he hit that curtain. And it was just nonstop. It was pandemonium the whole time because he's a character. He's not anything like what these other guys are doing. And I just think that a lot of these other guys that are developing themselves, into a persona, they're starting into wrestling. I just think that, you look at guys like The Undertaker, the Honky Tonk Man, these kind of people, they had characters like you would not believe. And that's why I think wrestling was so popular back in their era.
And longevity.
Yes, and longevity, because they didn't do that much in the ring. They didn't do all these high spots, but they did the things that just would get enough to get under the fans' skin, and they would have a great time. But I saw it firsthand in Mexico City with Sam when we did this show, and I mean, this place was packed, Arena Mexico, and at the end of the show, we're trying to get out to the car to leave, and there was a line of people out there waiting for him, and I'm like thinking, wow, this is kind of interesting. The first thing went through my mind are these, obviously I hope they're fans, and they were all just waiting for his autograph because they're like over in the United States. They know that it's a show, and they love their characters.
When you think back on Butler, for me personally, it was absolutely one of my favorite towns I ever wrestled in because the crowd was smart, they understood what it was, and they got it. At a certain point, you closed up shop. Was it a difficult decision for you to close up shop up there?
Well, it was. In fact, you don't know how many times to this day, now that I moved back here, I have so many people telling me, oh, you need to start up in Butler again. And I guess there are days when I kind of think, maybe, who knows? Because, it's like anything else. You try to get away from it or give it up, and it still comes and nips at your heels,
Only too well.
Yeah. So, when I left there, a lot of it had to do with because, I was going to be my career and everything, my full-time career. And then we ended up moving to Florida. And so I kind of thought to myself, we're going to leave while we're on top. We're going to leave Butler and leave a good taste in everybody's mouth. And that way, leave the door open if we ever do want to go back. I've been asked about doing anniversary shows, things like that. A return one show thing. That was the best of times. I thought we really did a pretty good job. We didn't get rich, believe me. I mean, the money that we used. I mean, we spent money on talent and things. One thing I did every show, and I am proud of this, and I think my boys will tell you the same thing. I paid everybody. And I never missed a payday. And everybody got their money after the show. I don't care if you were the referee or whatever. You got paid for what you did. And I think a lot of these guys, they used to tell me how grateful they were because there's a lot of times out there, the promoter would just say, well, I'll catch you next month. I'll catch you next show. Or I'm a little short tonight. We took care of the boys. And I think all the boys respected that. And I think that's why a lot of them wanted to come back to us. And because I think we treated them right. And T always handled the back room, and my sons used to be in the back room, and of course Matt, he was involved in those, those early days also. He did a lot of the booking in the back. So I had experienced wrestling guys in the back that knew way more than I would know. I never once went back there and tried to interfere with a finish or whatever. And my job was to just keep order and watch the front of the house. Make sure that things were moving okay. And I was never a self-promoter. I never would get in to the ring and try to get involved in the storylines. I was content. I'm the businessman. I'm standing out there and I'm making sure things are happening and thanking everybody when they'd walk out the door. I'd shake hands with everybody. Thank you for coming. See you next show. But I do have regrets that, that all had to end. But it's still part of life. Everything good has to come to an end. And but I certainly have no regrets. We had a great time.
After some time being in the business, Matt, finally Sam comes of age. Were you at all surprised that he wanted to get involved in the wrestling business?
Oh, no. Sam is the true wrestling lover in our family. If anybody were to know, Matt loves wrestling too. Matt is more of a structured kind of person that, he knows his job. He's excellent at it. But he never used to do the things like Sam. Like I can remember when we got our first computer. Sam would literally sit in front of that computer like in the middle of the summer all day long. And if I walked past that computer, it was either wrestling rings he was looking at. There were figures, that everybody was buying the dolls and things. Everything wrestling all the time was Sam. He wanted to go to every wrestling show. In fact, one of the things where I learned a lot was because of my job. I was traveling a lot all through the northeastern states. And Sam would go with me on business trips, especially in the summer because he was out of school. And he would get on the internet and find out where there's indie shows with certain wrestlers. And we would travel up to New England because I was there on business. We'd make it a point to drive over to Boston because there's a wrestling show tonight. And it was usually always indie shows. So Sam is truly the student of the business. And to this day, Sam is, nobody likes to say that their kids have been obsessed with anything, but Sam is much more like constant 24/7 wrestling. I'll say Matt might be 12 and maybe 5 days a week, something like that. But they both, really love it. But Sam, without a doubt, he's the one that really, he'll travel anywhere to wrestle. As long as, obviously he wants it's his living. He does it full time. And Sam just loves to travel to this day. He loves everything about it, and he goes all over the world, and he's cool with that. And as long as he's happy, we're happy.
Sam was the first one in your family to get signed to a developmental deal.
Yes.
As a father, how did that, who's loved wrestling his whole life, how did that make you feel?
Blew us away. Totally blew us away because I always thought that Matt would go first. And Sam was, again, traveling. I could specifically remember he was actually going to do some work for the WWE as an extra. And I could remember I drove him down to Baltimore one night and dropped him off at the arena. And, he walked in the arena and he had his tie and everything on. And I'm looking at him thinking, man, he's impressive. He's a big boy with that long blonde hair. And so, he was actually in front of the WWE people. And then he would come out and say that, yeah, I've got to work out in front of so-and-so today. And he ended up getting a developmental. And it just, I think it blew his mind more than anybody. And, and I think that Matt, it kind of, in a way, I think it kind of hurt Matt because Matt trained Sam. And Matt, we had a training school that we ran for, FNW. Matt is an unbelievable instructor. And so everything that he taught Sam helped Sam get to where he was going today. And both boys are close. I could always remember, if you were to ask Sam, who your favorite wrestler is, he's going to say Corey Graves because that's who taught him. And Matt, in his own right, a lot of people have never seen Matt wrestle. But when he was in NXT and everything, he was one of the tag team champs. Matt is a hell of a wrestler. I mean, he's really good. And when I see Sam, I see Matt because they've worked together. I got the opportunity, one of my shows, I think you were on that show, someplace up in Katanning, and the two of them got to wrestle each other. And I'll never forget when it was over, Sam said to me, he goes, Dad, that was the easiest match I ever had in my life. He goes, Matt is brilliant in the ring. And he says, he virtually helped me get through this whole match. And he goes, it was easy compared to anybody else he's ever wrestled. So, there's a lot of good feeling between those two boys. And me, being the father of having two sons that went to the WWE, that's almost like unheard of, So, anyway.
How did it affect you personally? I mean, Sam went there, he stayed for a little while, he got hurt, got released. How did it affect you personally when he got released?
I think it did. It didn't hurt me at all. I feel like when he got released, I mean, I knew, the entire situation that had gone on there. And I knew Sam well enough that Sam would never let that stop him. Now, he had an injury. A lot of people may not know about that, but he had to have surgery, and this was while he was at WWE. So, him leaving there, when he did, it didn't surprise me. But I think most wrestlers would have been down and out at that point and said, well, I think that I had my chance. Now, I'm not going to do it anymore. And, I'm on crutches, this, that, and everything else. Not Sam. I never thought for a minute that he would not bounce back and go do something. And once he was up and running and he was good to go, he ended up going, he was the British heavyweight champion. He was up in England and all over the place, wrestling all over the world. So that kind of began his journey of international stardom. And he never looked back. I mean, he never looked back at the WWE experience like it was a loss or anything like that. He just figured, it wasn't my time. This all worked out this way for a reason. He moved on to bigger and better things.
Next, Matt got signed.
Yeah.
Were you at all apprehensive, you personally, about, Sam had only got a short try there and got released? Were you at all apprehensive about maybe the same thing would happen for Matt?
No, not at all, because I think Matt was the best kept secret around for these WWE people. I knew what Matt could do, and I knew the way he could talk. And I knew from, seeing him wrestle, I just knew the persona that he put out there. I knew Matt's the kind of guy that would be successful at anything he wants. He's smart. I told you that before. He reads. He'll start talking to you. Somebody could bring up something about an author. And I don't even know the book. And Matt could tell you all about the author. That's the kind of guy he is. He's a really well-versed in so many subjects. His wife, Amy, she always says, and she's a school teacher by trade. Now she doesn't do that, but she's a very smart woman also. And she would always tell me early on, she'd say, you know what? She says, Matt is without a doubt the smartest man I know. She says, he is so diverse. And so I knew he would succeed in the WWE. And I knew, and I watched him. I went and saw his shows. He was really, really good. And he was going to be the next one called up to Raw. And then he ended up getting that last concussion where he got dropped on his head. And that kind of ended it.
So yeah, he got hurt. How did it affect you and your family whenever, he obviously a was so close. I mean, he was right there.
Yeah.
He got hurt. How did it affect you and your family whenever he had to retire?
Well, it hurt us bad, but not because he had to retire. We felt as though we were more worried about how it was going to affect him, because this is what he always wanted. This was his love, and he worked hard enough at NXT. He was right on the cusp of going to TV. So, naturally, any good parent's going to worry about how their kid's going to take this. The head injury thing, well, of course, we're concerned about that. But we didn't get too overly worked up because we figured that it was more of a preventive thing, to keep him from having future problems by getting him out of the ring. So that part of it, we were kind of glad that, that at least, before something really bad happened, they kind of put the stop to this. We were more concerned about how is Matt going to survive this, because how do you go from, being the guy next to go up to Raw to all of a sudden you're done, you're finished. He has a lot of the gene in him. I guess it's the Polinsky gene or whatever, because he basically pulled a Sam. He just said to himself, you know what, I got a family to feed. This is what I've always wanted. I'm not walking away from this. I'm not giving up on this. And whenever they started giving him things to do at WWE, there were things that he felt at first might have been, I don't want to say demeaning, but, little odd things for them that, he said, hey, I have a family to feed. I got to do something. I got to swallow my pride and do whatever I can to keep a job. And he worked hard and he worked hard and he kept doing all these different jobs. And then all of a sudden it dawned on, people down there in management that, hey, we need to try this guy talking, getting on the microphone, because we kind of have suspicions that he might have some kind of talent, because they heard him talk doing promos. And he also used to help at down at NXT. He used to help Dusty Rhodes when they were training people to do promos. So they knew that he had a talent. And so thank goodness, some people spoke up and said, well, this guy, he could have turned around and we could have got rid of him after the injury. He could have turned around and, put his tail between his legs and just drifted off into the sunset. But no, he's a fighter. He's staying here. He wants to be with us. And so they were gracious enough. They gave him a chance. And when they gave him a chance, they realized, whoa, we've uncovered something here, and just gave him a chance. And I knew the minute you give either of my boys a chance, they're coming home with it. And he did. He brought it home, and he never looked back. And next thing you know, look where he's at today and how successful.
He really seems like he's having the time of his life in this role. Is he having as much fun with it as it seems on television?
Oh yeah. He loves what he's doing. He's got a great career, and there's longevity there. Does he miss wrestling? Absolutely. That's his love. He loves to wrestle. And if he had his choice, I think there are a lot of days that he would love to get into a situation where he could get back into the mat, into the ring. Like, you see this thing with Daniel Bryan. Now he's, making a comeback. I think deep down inside, Matt would like to do something like that also. But I also think Matt's smart enough that he knows what his place is and where they have him. And I don't know that he would ever want to think about giving that up to go back to wrestling. But who knows? I don't know.
Personally feel like he has wrestled his last match?
Yes, I think he has, unless something came up in an unusual angle or twist or something that, that forced him into, doing something, or I shouldn't say forced, maybe, the situation came up that, Corey Graves needs to don the tights again for one show or whatever. I'm 100% sure he would probably be happy as anything to do that. Whether they would ever do something like that, that remains to be seen. I mean, that WWE, they determine all those things. But he's the kind of guy, he will do anything they ask him to do. And if they told him tomorrow, put the tights on, we need you to get involved in some show or whatever, I don't think he'd have his tights on, before the show is over. He'd be ready to go. But he loves what he's doing, and he's very good at it. And he's met so many great people in this industry and out of the industry, celebrities, things like that. And, the fans love him. He's got a huge fan following. And I've been to the shows before, WWE, when the announcers come out, and all three announcers will come out, and he clearly gets the biggest pop. So he's just got that persona. The guys love him, the girls love him. He's got it going.
One thing I do in a lot of the interviews is word association. you covered couple of these guys. So if you want to be brief on some of these,
Sure.
That's fine. But you can say as much as you like. First one, Norm Connors. What's your thoughts?
Professional. That's a tough one. There's so many adjectives for Norm. Successful.
Okay. How about Jim Miller?
Jim Miller, I would say successful, good guy.
How about T. Rantula?
Best friend.
Last one, Joe Rogers.
Joe Rogers, the one word.
Because he did start running your town.
Yeah,
after you left.
yeah.
You can say as many words as you want.
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot. I think the thing with him was I got kind of agitated when he ran against me up in Butler one night. And all I'll say is justice, prevailed. We still had a full house, and I understand, there were a lot of issues going on with him and guys and payment and things like that. I just think I'll use the word karma. How's that?
Okay. Out of all the guys you've ever booked on any of your shows, who was the worst guy that you worked with?
Wow, the worst guy.
Besides me.
Yeah, well, I was going to say you, but no, I don't know that I really had. Okay, I will say this. There was a group of them, and so I won't even name names, but I had some people come over from Harrisburg, a woman and two guys, and they came as kind of a group, and they came over and they basically held me up for extra money because they wanted more transportation money and all that, and they realized this after they drove over from the Harrisburg area, and these are people that in their own right, they became successful. And it surprised me that people would do something like that. But again, I'm not mentioning any names because, I think it's a private thing, and
okay.
I'm not out there. I've never been one to burn a bridge with anybody,
Sure. You don't want to name names. But what, besides holding somebody up for money, what makes someone a bad talent to book?
Somebody that no-shows you. That's a big thing for me.
Does that happen to you very often?
No, it would happen once in a while, and it was never one of the primary people that we were really depending on. But still, it's an insult, whenever you bring somebody in, or they knew all along they weren't going to come, and they didn't show you the decency of letting you know. I think that's probably, and the other thing is, people, you hear the stories, which I'm sure you've heard them. People tend to not say things to your face, but they like to say things in the background. And I used to hear things about, I'm looking out for my sons and things like that. Well, you know what? I'm the promoter. I own the business. If I want to push you or I want to push anybody else, which I never really did. I mean, I gave everybody a fair shake. That's my prerogative, but don't take the money that I pay you and then go behind my back and stab it like that. But the wrestling business is loaded with that.
Here's my thoughts on that, and I know this is your interview, but I sort of had the same thing with my brother in Altoona, and I'm not talking bad about my brother because he was a big guy, a good talent, good talent, maybe not the best talent in the world, but a good talent. But you know what I could count on? He was going to be there every single show, and guess what? I'm assuming that the reason you pushed T and Sam and Matt. Because you could count on them to be there every show.
And they did the legwork. I mean, Sam especially. Sam was out with me and T putting posters up religiously. Sam would go on his own. He would take posters in a car and he'd go. Sam's a great promoter. Sam's got a lot of experience in promoting and producing a wrestling show. He's the kind of guy that if I'm looking for a partner, to work with me, if he's not going to wrestle or he is going to wrestle, I want Sam to be my partner. Sam's the guy that's going to go out there and make things happen. Matt, I would use because he's brilliant. Matt is the guy that, if you're looking for a storyline or a way to do something, Matt's the thinker. Matt's the guy that could look down the road several shows and he'll have it all mapped out in his head the way that he feels it's going to work. So he's that guy I would go to for something like that. But Sam, he learned a lot when we ran shows, and Sam has run some shows down in Florida actually, and I helped him. So he did a lot of the work, and I did a lot of the work, and we ran the shows, and they came off. They were huge crowds, and very good shows. And so Sam knows the business. Sam knows how to, if he tells you he's going to put on a show, you could bet your butt go to the show, or if you're a worker that has a chance to be on the show, get on his show because he knows what he's doing. He knows that part of the business well.
So you have two boys that have been very successful in the business, but you also have two daughters.
Yes.
Is there any thought or possibility of either one of them or both of them getting involved in the wrestling business?
My daughter Alex, I feel she missed the boat. She should have been a professional wrestler because Alex is very tall. She's about 5'10", something like that. Maybe 5'11", I don't even know. But she's a very, beautiful girl. She's a big girl, and I believe that she's very athletic. I believe that if she would have, got involved in all that and would have had her two brothers to train her, she would have been an ass-kicking female wrestler. I think she would have done very well. Sydney, of course, she's, 19 years old. She's going to school. Sydney, I don't know about Sydney. I don't know if she would do that, but Sydney would love doing the behind-the-scenes work and things like that. She's actually going to school right now. She's going to be a beautician and cosmetologist and all those things. So she's very, very talented. She does unbelievable things with makeup and hair and things like that. Now, I would see her, being involved in part of maybe production of wrestling, because I know there's people that cut hair and, they do the makeup and things for wrestling shows and things like that. I would say that would be a very good thing for her. I don't know. If she ever wanted to train and be a wrestler, I would certainly never stop her because she's pretty physical too. I would say that Alex probably should have done it because she missed the boat, or we missed the boat. Sid, I don't think she would really. She would surprise me if she said she wanted to do it.
So we have covered a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think that, I enjoy doing this because a lot of people, I've been, over the years, some people criticize me thinking that I'm some guy that's rich and had all this money and decided to throw the money to my boys so they could have a wrestling promotion. That's never been the case. I could tell you, I'm a bit of a wrestling historian. I've been following it. I've still got old magazines and books and things like that. So when some of these guys would have this opinion way back in the day about me and promoting, I've had people say, what is he promoting? What does he know about wrestling? He's just, he's the money guy. That's never been further from the truth. I've always had a pretty good knowledge of wrestling. I was just fortunate enough to have two boys that could take the ball and run with it. And all I did as a good father, I never wanted them to stop following their dreams. And just like anybody else, I just helped them along to help them realize their dreams. But they did all the work. I never taught them how to take a bump or do a body slam. I just managed to help give them some of the tools,
Okay.
help them along.
Well, I really appreciate this. I appreciate you giving me your time.
No problem.
We're going to close on this. Thank you very much.
It was great speaking with you.
Guys, girls, please stop having shitty matches. You are ruining my life.